Welcome in. Touch and agree. Let's touch and agree of unity. We're going to touch and agree for unity here. Come into a unified field out of the lowest density separation consciousness, doing the alchemical journey of ascension, which is salvation journey too. Ascending to hence to the spaces you came from. But I want to welcome everybody in. And the reason I cannot open with this video is going to go right into this. We're going to talk about the merging of our light body. And no more could I ever share that with somebody I really appreciate. Like having Seven the other day, I'm going to share a video that just blows my mind. It just was put out the other day by Sarah Alcaldi, the alchemist. And it's good stuff. Them who have an ear to listen, and them who are just starting to listen too. The concept's deep. You can ask questions after. Send me messages. Another way to send me messages and send me, if you could help with what we're doing here, definitely Cash App dboy, dboy, all small letters, right? Not capital. dboy with a D and the boy. And WCU, small letters, Cash App. Abril Danny 1962 at gmail.com if you have any questions or want to connect or want to talk, want to correspond. We can definitely do that. All right. So we're going to get into it because it's not long, but it's not short. So I don't want to take it too much of your time as we get into what we're going to talk about, the light body. Very powerful. I revelated like heck off this. When she brought it forth, it just resonated with me, which Sarah does a lot with me. That's why I appreciate her, and we'll always share her videos. So let's go just a little back and let's go.
Many of us going through a spiritual awakening want to activate our light body and merge with our higher self, but we don't know what that process looks like. So today, I'm going to be explaining how to activate the light body through a hermetic perspective. The main spiritual initiation for this age is done through mind-heart coherence. In fact, mind-heart coherence has gone by many.
That's what I hooked you up the video 2 videos ago. Was with the intrinsic. Remember, I talked about this coherence, this connection.
Different names in past ages. So when we're talking about mind-heart coherence within the context of this age, and how mind-heart coherence is connected to the light body, what this specifically has to do with is the synchronization of our descending body and our ascending body, as well as the synchronization of our left and right hemispheres inside our energy field. So when we're talking about synchronization now, we're talking about coherency. That's why we hear the term in this age so much, coherency. When you think of the term coherency, that is in this age and in this context, what I am calling synchronization. So this union, this holy marriage, is the synchronization of our ascending body, our descending body, our mental body, and our heart. Now, the interesting thing about this is that in Hermetic orders and even other orders, they used things called a blind. A blind is when you conceal the actual symbol or you conceal the actual knowledge of something and you replace it with a different term so that you're throwing people off track. You're confusing someone who hasn't been initiated yet. So you're doing that intentionally. You're concealing something in its true form and the true knowledge specifically so that the real thing can only be understood and comprehended by someone who's been initiated and is therefore mature enough to fully understand that. So that's what a blind is called. Now, there would be more than one blind presented to conceal the fact that the mind was actually referring to the heart. Why would that be so big of a blind? Why would wanting to give all of the credit, all of the power to the mind and use that as a concealed term for the heart? Why would that be such like a hidden thing? This was to conceal the heart center, which is the unified field of consciousness. That's what the heart center is. It's the unity. It's the multiplicity. It's the diversity of different yous, all connected through the field. That oneness, the
different yous. Wow, that's heavy. This intrinsic that we're seeing here is the aspect of the different various yous in different dimensions. Remember, your higher self is you. We would call that the future self. The higher self is you. The versions of you, because time is not linear. I'm thinking about time is not linear, how to explain this. Everything is happening at the same time. Past, present, future, now. We only see it as because being in the density, dense, as time, or as in time allows us to process on this level, right? But in the higher stuff, it's in the higher dimensions, it's not. It's the same. It's you, and you doing the same thing on different levels of same time. The other version of you, they would call it quantuming or quantum entanglement, quantum physics. Now, and like I said, I did a video with Ben Bill Wynn, and she was talking how quantum physics was recognized 4,000 years ago in Taoism and Buddhism, and esoteric of Taoism and Buddhism.
Unified field of consciousness. So the heart center being concealed and then called the brain was actually to conceal the fact that the heart center is how you can travel. It's how you can ascend. It's the largest portal for our ascension. It's how we evolve, and it's how we tap into our free will, because now we're accessing through the unified field of consciousness whatever we wish to bring forward into creation. So the heart center and the mind being in synchronicity together, being synchronized so that they're working together, is what activates our light body. But the most important part of this activation is the one that is least known. I've never even heard it talked about. And this is what's called to become the quintessential, to become what's known in a Hermetic order as the stellar man or stellar woman. Stellar meaning the star body or the light body. So this is an alchemy known as the quintessential. It is when you have merged. It is when you have brought harmony, reconciled, integrated, and created equilibrium between all of your elements, between all of your different bodies, between all of your portions of consciousness. And guess what? That's not gonna look the same. In fact, it rarely looks the same. And this is what's missing when it comes to knowing about activating the light body. To become the quintessential is to become utterly unique. Now, the paradox within this is that even though we completely step into a uniqueness, which is called intrinsic, something intrinsic to us.
Why are you not investing in tax liens? No, seriously. Why are you not investing into one of the most incredible real estate strategies that...
The paradox is that the more we step into...
Remember we just did the word of the day with the intrinsic. It's your fingerprint. It's the subtlety. And then put that with quintessential, which is what I just read. I was looking up the word myself. Is the aspect of you and all of you merging together to the greatest form of you. I like that.
To our sovereignty, our I, our individuation, and we become unique. We still end up united and as a part of an even larger whole. And that even larger whole is called a group consciousness. The core features of any level of consciousness are exemplified by a person's sincerity toward consciousness. The lower levels of consciousness exist in a sleep-like trance. The core features of these states contain entitlement, blame, projections, and little self-awareness, which does not give the individual the creative power of free will, or what I call sovereignty. These lower levels of consciousness also have the core feature of none to little ability for objective self-evaluation, and sometimes even view consciousness as a personal attack. This is because this stage is technically sleepwalking. So to increase a person's inner being here would be a threat, but only a threat to the programs inside us that we identify with more.
I have to say this. Only a threat to the programs that lie within inside us. It reminds me of when Neo, was taken up and they walked to the Matrix, and he said, see those? They're so connected to the Matrix, they'll fight you for it and not kill you because they're not ready to be unplugged, right? That's what the people that she's talking about, they're running on programs, continuously running on programs. We've been running on programs. It's heavy.
More than our true I. For a person to successfully evolve out of these levels of predeterminism, intense objective self-evaluation is needed, willingness, and radical self-honesty in how our defense mechanisms protect us from awareness or anything we think is unpleasant. If you would like to understand more on this threshold, you can watch my video Projections, the first stage of initiation towards spiritual awakening. Now, the core features of an individual entering higher states of consciousness is high degrees of discernment, high degrees of presence, operating fully from paradox, oneness, which also allows us to perceive multiple perspectives. This is also called universal consciousness. Humor, because they have returned to the primordial childlike essence, and unconditional love, which is not what we think it is. Unconditional love is not an open invitation for unconsciousness or even evil. It is the acceptance that all life has a right to exist and to be at different stages of maturation. Judgments in all forms, both internal and external, are what block a person from entering this chamber of the heart. And so judgment releases are how to clarify our spiritual sight and enter into mind-heart coherence at this junction of our journey. So the process of embodying our higher self is actually one that is deeply connected back to the heart center, because the process of embodying and integrating and merging with our higher self is one where we have to actually peel back and dissolve all of the many different programs, all the many different layers, blocks from our unique and true nature. When you have awakened into the state of enlightenment or purified your being into becoming the quintessence, that's a spiritual body or the light body, that is not going to look the same. This is what is known in Hermeticism. It's not going to look the same. There will be fruits, because when you're operating at a specific level of consciousness, there's defining features. There's core features. So there will be obvious and apparent fruits to that state of consciousness. That is what will be similar across the line. But beyond that unity of those core features, that always, it doesn't matter what level of consciousness we're operating within, there will be core features to that level of consciousness, ones that you can definitely tell they're fruits of. So the fruits of this level of consciousness, when we've activated into the stellar man or stellar woman, there's going to be defining features. But there is going to be a core intrinsic nature. And this is what's not well known. So that's why when you look at a specific type of being that's enlightened, it's not going to look the same as another enlightened being, and it's not going to look the same as another enlightened being, even though they will all share core defining features that are a representative or show the fruits of that level of consciousness. So there's an intrinsicness, there's a uniqueness, Because coming from, once again, this Hermetic perspective, the light body is also deeply connected to the heart center, and the heart center has already within it this unique, almost like fingerprint, this unique intrinsicness of our own nature. And so really what the task is when it comes to activating the light body is going within oneself to polish and refine and deeply develop our unique.
Attention retirees, if you're willing to be at your computer from 9 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. on most weekdays, I can
essence. In fact, without that, there can actually be no genuine awakening to that level of consciousness. Because at this level of consciousness, everything I just said can actually be described as the unprogrammed self. So it's you without your conditioning, it's you without all of the programs and all of the different distortions, which come from many places, but all of the different programs and distortions that we're operating within. So without those, who would you be without those? Who would you be without a conditioned will, without a programmed intelligence? So the unprogramming is the process, because what we're doing is allowing our true essence and our true nature to be accepted and to be developed from there. So do you see how even the mind, because a lot of times we think of programming coming from strictly external sources, but do you see how also internally we do things to not meet ourselves where we're at? So therefore, what if we're more
somewhat self-sabotaging your own consciousness by your fears that you may not have illuminated and catch yet? That's why I was talking about doing the real shadow work and going in with the inner child and stuff, is you'll start catching these nuances, these intrinsic things that you'll go, oh, I see that's connected to that. That's why I do that. I've been doing that recently.
more unique than we have the capacity to actually really embody. Well, then that's our own block. That's our own, whether even if it's an internalized critic, it's still our own program that we're reinforcing, and that could be the barrier. So there's multiple different sources when we're talking about like where this programming is coming from. But really what we want to look at is how would we allow ourselves to grow? How would we allow ourselves to develop if we had no filters, if we had no blocks or no buffers between us and whatever is the truth of our being? Knowing that the truth of our being may change, it may expand, because once again, we're evolving. I cannot emphasize this point enough, because a lot of us have real outdated and really wounded versions of what the light body or what enlightenment looks like. We think it's one-dimensional. We think that there's no personality, there's no essence, and it's completely the opposite. It is actually the exact opposite. When you have your light body activated, what that's really saying is that you've gone through such an internal process of dissolving programs, of dissolving judgments, dissolving anything within the self that was keeping the self inside a lower state of being and inside an egoic complex of some sort. You've healed, essentially. So you're not even denying the different parts of the bodies within our energy field. So because there is no denial, and because anything that was being met as a buffer before to keep us from a larger reality, and any programmings are dissolved at this point, and they're reconciled, meaning that we've met them, we've accepted and seen that these were operating, and now we've healed beyond that point of that programming. They're not operating, they're not putting their input, they're not putting their influences within our being. All of that ends up shedding layer after layer after layer, until what you'll notice is that a being has a lot more flexibility. They're not one-dimensional. They're not rigid. They're not bound by all of those different conditions and programmings, even the ones from past spiritual ages. So because of that, there's a fluidity, and fluidity is a very strong core feature of this level of consciousness. That
We tend to think that our spirit is in our body. That's actually not correct. Your body is in your spirit. People always tell me, oh, I don't have.
That core feature of fluidity looks childlike, which is why you always hear people talk about how enlightenment is actually the awakening of your inner child, your divine child. There's a fluidity there where it's not trying to appear a specific way. Do you see how that's coming once again from the conditioned self? Once you're in your true intrinsic nature, you are not held hostage by other people's beliefs. As a matter of fact, this is such an important point to understand because sometimes it's easier to understand where we are our worst enemy and we are our inner critic.
And what I was seeing with what she was saying is that we could take things and make them seem logical and say, oh, that's the logical part, when it's really not at all. It's programming. That's why it's so important to put this together with the left and right hemisphere, activating that feminine aspect of your intuition and your creativeness into these both sides with logic. Now, logic can be a higher reasoning logic now. And you start seeing these very, very subtle realities and truths that are hidden about you, hidden in your subconscious, that when you shine some light on it, it now comes out because you take it in. You're okay going to your dark side to do the healing.
And we have our own energetically sensitive awareness accidentally attack us. And then sometimes it's harder for us to realize when it's the opposite, when it's we are completely conditional. We're the opposite of unconditional. So we're conditioned, and whatever we do is conditional on our external environment. So some of us got one of those realms going on more than the other, and vice versa. It really just depends on the individual. But both internal and external conditioning keep us from true evolution. They keep us stuck in different paradigms. They keep us stuck in different projections. They keep us stuck in all these different blocks, and they're just programming that's laying over the truth of us or our intrinsicness. And so when it comes to what true evolution looks like, true enlightenment, we could even be held hostage by other people's projections or by our own definition or our own what we think that would look like or be like. And so this is probably the most challenging and obscure part of activating the light body, because a lot of the mental body needs to be tempered and disciplined through meditation. So in a sense, that's almost like an easier sequence to follow when it comes to that part of the light body. It's the mind-heart coherence once again, because the mind-heart coherence is a super powerful initiation. It's necessary in order to even experience the things I'm talking about right now. But this really obscure and niche aspect to our own internal stars, to our own quintessence, is really what needs a lot of understanding. Because to reach this level of discernment into having an awakened light body, we're going to need to be able to cultivate the discernment to perceive that each person, regardless of how much they have refined their body, mind, spirit, regardless of how evolved they are, they're going to still be unique. And sometimes we think that going through a spiritual evolutionary process is the opposite of that. We think that you lose your uniqueness. That's not true at all. And that's coming from, in fact, just false old spiritual teachings that people could not do the great work. They left at a certain point and tapped out and said, okay, this is it. So when you're truly operating at this state, you have to actually just dissolve whatever programs are going on that you will notice are thinking for you. So it's the opposite of thinking exactly the same. This is also called gnosis. It's when you have direct experience. And this is so important because in order to do that, the process of activating the light body is actually to remove the different programs that are thinking for you. Remove all of the programs so that you learn how to perceive something or to think for yourself without what those programs, or without, even if that's a conditioning coming from external sources, whatever it is, you essentially are learning how to think by undoing and unlearning what was thinking for you. This is so important because, believe it or not, many people don't know what it's like to experience thinking for themselves. They've just had a bunch of different other programs and thoughts cultivate and condition what they think is themselves, or they think they're thinking. So from a Hermetic perspective, why would you build on distorted grounds?
Here's how you can end any fight in seconds with this nearly indefensible move that I'm going to show you right now. Picture this. You just finished dinner.
Clear all of the different programs out so that then you can learn how to think for yourself. And this might sound like, on the surface level, like duh, right? Think for yourself. Other things are thinking for you. But actually, this is coming from even a more subtle level. This is coming from the level of the things that we even just took for granted, like we were told even a long time ago, just things that we never questioned. And so we just let one barrier and one thought program and one thing cultivate whatever we think is logic. That's why it doesn't matter what mystery school or order you go to, you learn logic. You learn either the trivium or the quadrivium, you learn how to think. So do you see how the synchronization of the mind and the heart is really this process of learning how to think for ourselves, as well as going within our true intrinsic nature and using our higher mind to cultivate that? That's how they work in synchronicity. And when they're so in harmony, what they're really doing is operating, vibrating so fast at an increased level of consciousness that now they're out of the realm of ego per se, ego in its negative context, not as its individuality. Just they're out of that realm, and now you've expanded beyond the programmed intelligence, and now you're in active, awakened, or what's called alive intelligence. When you're operating from a live intelligence, you can directly experience something. This whole process I described has also been called in past ages going through the eye of a needle.
You guys, especially you guys coming from Christianity, you know the eye of the needle. And this process of initiation is where it comes from. That's This is very deep. I hope you guys are grasping. If you don't hesitate to email me or drop the comments in there, and I will definitely get back to you and respond to you, because this is definitely coming from a different space of higher. But if you're walking on, and this is alignment, and if you're hearing it, go, it makes sense. Because a lot of you, that if you're new and start hearing it and you're waking up, you're spinning faster. You're not going to take the time it took me to get from point A to where I'm at now. It's quickened, it's faster.
Going through an eye of a needle, because that's how much of the conditioning that once it drops off and dissolves through the process of you awakening, you're now just becoming your intrinsic self. And your intrinsic self, as I said, is flexible. It's even been known as childlike. It's innocence. That's what gets freed. That's the portal. That's how the heart center truly is. So that's why it's so important, because how can you travel? Can you imagine if somebody had their light body activated and they were all like in their ego about stuff? Going through the heart center to travel in the unified field of consciousness means plasticity. That's why I love that neuroplasticity is talked about so much in this age. It's the same. Mind-heart coherence creates neuroplasticity. Plasticity is another way of saying you become fluid, you become childlike. You're not caught up in the rigidity and calcification process of whatever you're calcifying or hardening into that you're calling yourself. So because of that, this unconditioned mind is highly dependent on our ability to identify and cultivate our uniqueness our intrinsicness and not allow the world to kind of like project onto us whatever we should be. This plasticity or fluidity that I'm talking about, that comes from an awakened intelligence or an awakened spirit, is also known in alchemy as rejuvenation. This is why alchemy is so linked with having regenerative powers, regenerating oneself. It's because you're able to regenerate yourself because you're not programmed, you're not coming from the lower mind. So when we're coming from a live intelligence rather than programmed intelligence,
Powerful.
it offers a plasticity that also gives us free will. This is where we get true agency from. We get free will because once the mind and heart center have synchronized and the heart portal's open now we have true freedom. True freedom to create whatever we wish to experience, or true freedom to incarnate wherever we wish to incarnate, or to even exit this reality, or to even exit this universe, whatever we wish, because we haven't calcified what is true, innate, and intrinsic within us. I hope this has helped you shine. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next.
All right, very good. I mean, very deep, very good, but it's definitely happening to me. This stuff, I see it. It just, I'm in that space where the heart, the change, the connection is happening. And what is it? Plasticity, she said, is fluidity. Now it's a flow. It's fluid flow. Notice water will always find its way because it's fluid and it flows. It's fluidity, right? Placidity, she said, and I'm gonna have to look that word up. She always uses some good words, bigger words, and I look them up. I go, that's deep. I like the way it's correlated input. But you guys, man, this was a good one. I hope that this rings your bell and connects your frequency. You guys have a great day. Remember, dboy West Coast Uncensored. Cash App. Abril.Danny1962 at gmail.com if you have any questions. You guys have a great